Previously on Bleach, we begin with the story of two goldfish. One day the larger one dies, and the remaining goldfish seemed lonesome, but after that day it began to flourish and grow. It was good that the larger one had died. 12 years have passed since the defeat of Yhwach, and the Soul Society has been rebuilding. The world had found peace, but peace as always is an illusion. A young Kazui Kurosaki, the son of Ichigo, has been secretly helping lost souls, opening mysterious portals with a ritual that he believes helps the souls to move on. He claps 3 times, bows twice, and does a final clap. During the ritual, we see these floating eyeballs as a portal with teeth suddenly appears, and from it emerges hell butterflies. We then cut to the Soul Society at the grave of Yushido Ukitake. The Gotei 13 have been preparing for the Konso Reisei for Captain Ukitake 12 years after his noble sacrifice following the Kamikake ritual. The Konso Reisei requires capturing a hollow in the world of the living and purifying it before the captain's grave. Meanwhile, Ichigo and the lieutenants gather in Karakura Town. Ichigo has joined them in the world of the living for this sacred duty. Renji, Yumichika, Hisagi, and the other lieutenants are present, along with the new generation including Ichika, who was snuck there without permission in order to watch her father. But suddenly Ichika yells out as hell beasts have emerged out of nowhere. They emit no spiritual pressure. She cries out a warning as the lieutenants respond immediately. But unfortunately, Kiyone was impaled by one of the hell beasts and Renji was sent smashing through buildings. It was very clear as Ikkaku states that these aren't ordinary hollows. But then suddenly, amongst the chaos, Szayelaporro rises from a portal. From the depths of hell, the 8th ranking Espada returns. He appears to have been transformed as his hollow hole floats outside of his body, and horns that represent his suffering and hate are overflowing out of his head. He also is able to wield these chains at his command, and he refers to himself as Jailer of Hell. He makes Renji aware that he knows who his daughter is as he threatens to kill her, as he then wraps Renji in chains. Returning to the Soul Society, the gathered captains at the grave of Ukitake notice these black blobs floating in the air. Head Captain Shunsui reveals a terrible myth that now seems horribly true to the assembled captains. He refers to these black blobs as phosphoplasm from hell, adding that the Konso Reisei doesn't appear to help dense Reiatsu return to the Soul Society. It may be that the true purpose of the Konso Reisei is to cast captains into hell. This means that every captain who has ever died, including Yamamoto, Unohana, and now Ukitake, have been damned to eternal suffering in hell. Ichigo, who appears to help Renji, faces off against Szayelaporro, who reveals to him with the disappearance of Aizen and Yhwach's Reiatsu, and after the Soul Society had sent 3 captains into hell in quick succession, the balance has now collapsed and the gates of hell can be opened from the inside. Suddenly, the massive Zanpakuto of Yushido Ukitake pierces through Szayelaporro, and it seems like his Konso Reisei ritual has been complete. We learn that Ichigo's substitute Shinigami badge had observed the hollow purification of the hell beasts, thus casting Ukitake into hell, but not as we remember him. His Sogyo no Kotawari has grown to monstrous size, and he impaled Szayelaporro with brutal efficiency and had dragged him back through the gates of hell. Szayelaporro's final words echo in our ears: "Haven't you ever wondered why the butterflies that guide the Shinigami have hell in their name?" The gates of hell shut, and somewhere in Karakura Town we see Kazui wandering the streets, unaware of the role that he is playing in this larger plot that is yet to unfold. And so begins the echoing Jaws of Hell arc. Chapter 1, Truth You Deny. The gates of hell slam shut with a resonance that echoes across dimensions. The skeletal guardian's single eye dims, retreating into the shadows, and in Karakura Town, the phosphoplasm drifts like black snow, dissolving into nothingness. We begin in the Soul Society as some time has passed, as the captains have gathered at the 1st Division meeting hall, but there was a strange, unsettling atmosphere. How could there not be, after what Shunsui had revealed at the grave of Ukitake. Shunsui Kyoraku stood at the head of the assembled captains as his usual casual demeanor is replaced by something heavier. The weight of his words still hung in the air. The Konso Reisei sent the deceased captains to hell. It can't be. How could this have happened? Rukia's voice cuts through the silence first. Her fingers gripped the handle of her zanpakuto as she struggles to come to terms with the late Captain Ukitake being rewarded in death with eternal damnation. Emotionally, she says, Captain Ukitake, Captain Unohana, and Head Captain Yamamoto, they can't be. In hell, Mayuri Kurotsuchi finishes her sentence, his painted face showing genuine intrigue. How dreadful. Though I must say, Captain Commander, your timing in sharing this myth with us is rather convenient. Shunsui's eyes seemed somber, staring at the ground. I only just realized it myself. The phosphoplasm of hell appearing confirmed that there was more to that superstition. Superstition? Byakuya's voice carried its usual calm, but he sounded firm too. So the Shinigami Academy has been teaching an incomplete truth to us for over a millennium. He reminds Captain Kyoraku that a Konso Reisei was also performed on his grandfather Ginrei Kuchiki. Byakuya adds the Konso Reisei doesn't help to return the reishi to the atmosphere, but instead it removes it entirely by sending it somewhere else, right? Rose Otoribashi's fingers drummed against his leg in an anxious rhythm. Every captain who's died, every lieutenant with a Rei grade 3 or higher has been condemned to hell by our own hands. The usual grin on Shinji Hiraku's face was gone entirely. All that he can say is that's a real comforting thought. Rukia nervously responds, then we can get them back. If they're in hell, we can... Mayuri interrupts her. Ridiculous. Their reishi cannot be left lingering in the Soul Society. We need to look into the matter and study the phosphoplasm I gathered at Ukitake's grave before we start making these absurd suggestions. As ever, you sure do have a way with words, Kurotsuchi, Lisa Yanomaru says while adjusting her glasses. Toshiro Hitsugaya's jaw tightened. Something doesn't seem right about all of this. Kensei Muguruma frustratingly says, so we just accept that every strong Shinigami pays the price for their power by ending up in hell? Some reward for protecting the Soul Society, huh? Byakuya remembers that there could be more information about the Konso Reisei in his family archives. He says there must be records that the noble families would have. He stops mid-sentence as all of the captains look at him. What is it, Kuchiki? Mayuri's interest has sharpened. Byakuya's expression remained neutral as he continues, there are some inconsistencies in the historical records of the noble families. References are made to the Konso Reisei and it being linked to one of the 5 great noble families. But as you know, we are only aware of 4. The Kuchiki, Tsuneyashiro, Shiba, and before he can finish, someone says, the Shihoin. A voice calls out as we see Yoruichi appear instantly amongst the captains. She says, the Shihoin clan archives have similar gaps too, like someone removed all traces of that 5th noble family. How curious, Mayuri practically is purring, a mystery within a mystery. Rukia's Reiatsu fled. This isn't a game. Captain Ukitake is, Mayuri says, dead as his response cuts deep. He has been for 12 years. What's in hell now may not even resemble the captain you once knew. The room awkwardly falls silent as Captain Commander Shunsui sighs. The weight of leadership is evident in every line on his face. Nanao-chan, send word to Kisuke Urahara. We need his perspective on this. Captain Kurotsuchi, I want you to analyze any phosphoplasm samples that you've gathered. Captain Kuchiki and Shihoin-san investigate these missing records carefully. And the rest of you be on the lookout for the lieutenants who are returning from the world of the living. We return to Karakura Town in the immediate aftermath following Szayelaporro's exit as the streets look like a war zone. There is rubble and dust following the intense battle with the deceased Espada and the Hell Beasts who have no spiritual pressure. There was a very unsettling atmosphere, something that had made even the experienced Shinigami feel uneasy. The lieutenants stood amongst the wreckage, breathing heavily as Sentaro tended to Kyone's wounds. Ikaku and Yumichika rush to the injured Renji while he holds onto Ichika. Ichigo lowers his zanpakuto, staring into the space at the very spot where the gates of hell had just disappeared from. Rangiku calls out to Ichigo as the lieutenants gather, trying to process what had just happened. Ichigo scans for any more threats before joining the others and asking, is everyone okay? Akon responds by saying, aside from Lieutenants Kiyone and Abarai, the rest of us made it out unscathed. Sentaro holds on to Kiyone, saying that the wound in her stomach has stopped bleeding, but she needs to be taken back to the Soul Society for medical attention. The lieutenants appear to be puzzled. How did none of them detect the threat that had just appeared, as they wonder why their opponents have no spiritual pressure? Ikkaku says, like I said, these things weren't ordinary hollows. Thankfully, they didn't put up much of a fight, but something tells me this isn't over. He asks Ichigo and Renji who was that guy that they were fighting. He seemed to have put up more of a fight than the others. Renji looks up in frustration as he says, that was the Arrancar we defeated during the war against Aizen. He was cast into hell, but somehow he came back. How did he know about Ichika, and what was up with his appearance and those new powers? Ichigo interrupts as he shares with them what Szayelaporro had told him before he left. He tells the gathered lieutenants about how dead captains are cast into hell by the Soul Society as a salvation via the Konso Reisei, how the jaws of hell are being opened from the other side because of the disappearance of Yhwach and Aizen, and after the Soul Society had sent powerful spiritual pressures to hell one after the other. First Yamamoto, then Unohana, and today Ukitake. Hisagi struggles to comprehend this. How is this possible? Captain Ukitake's Konso Reisei wasn't completed. Ichigo reveals, apparently we massacred the Hell Beasts in front of my substitute Shinigami badge, which served as Ukitake's eyes. According to the Arrancar, that seemed to be enough. Also, didn't any of you notice Captain Ukitake's enlarged Zanpakuto appearing out of the gate of hell, dragging the Espada back in? Ichigo continues, before he left, he mentioned that hell has always been beside us. And why do the butterflies that guide the Shinigami through the Senkaimon have hell in their names? Omaida stares with shock and confusion as the injured Kiyone mutters under her breath, Captain Ukitake. Akon tells Ichigo to head to Kisuke Urahara and relay everything that has happened to him. Considering that the enemy had no spiritual pressure, he may not even be aware of what has just happened. Meanwhile, he tells the lieutenants that they should report back to the Soul Society immediately. Yu seems to be bouncing with energy as she calls out to a frightened Ichika who is still hiding behind her father. Yo, redhead, that was stupid but super brave. I respect it. Ichika manages a teary-eyed smile before Yumichika and Ikkaku help both Ichika and Renji return to the Soul Society. Ichigo yells out to Renji, hey, don't worry, we will find out how he knew about Ichika. An exhausted Renji says yeah, as his arms tightened protectively around his daughter. Before leaving, Renji says, Kurosaki, he said something about him being clairvoyant now. Make sure you relay that to Kisuke, he might know something about it. Ichigo heads over to speak with Urahara as the lieutenants return to the Soul Society. Elsewhere in Karakura Town, the Kurosaki house was quiet as Kazui and Kon sneak back in after having helped that soul move on. Kazui sits on his bed swinging his legs while Kon paced back and forth nervously across the floor as he tells him, you can't keep doing this. Kazui, please, you have to listen to me. But I'm helping them, Kazui protested, his voice carrying that innocent certainty that only a child would have. He says they're lonely and I'm taking them somewhere where they won't be alone. But it's not your job. No wonder that good-for-nothing Shinigami with the afro slacks off so much. Zenosuke won't have a job if you keep doing this. Kazui, have you noticed anything strange about those portals that you've been opening? Have you noticed those weird eyeballs when you do the clapping, or the teeth around the portal? Kon, you worry way too much. He said that they're safe. He promised me. Kon froze mid-step. Who promised you? My friend, Kazui smiled brightly. He comes to hang out with me sometimes. He told me about the ritual, the 3 claps, 2 bows, 1 clap. He said it's an old family tradition for helping souls pass on. Kon's small, tiny button eyes somehow managed to convey genuine horror. Kazui, you're not supposed to hang out with guys who teach you goddamn rituals. That's silly, Kazui giggled. He yawns and says, it's a secret, so I'm not supposed to talk about it. But don't worry, he knows all about dad and mom, and he even knows about you, Kon. A chill suddenly ran down Kon's stuffed spine as he imagines this stranger ripping the stuffing out of his mouth. Kazui, Kon tried to keep his voice steady. This is why you shouldn't be sneaking out at night, you're going to get me killed. But by this point, Kazui had already fallen asleep peacefully while Kon was sweating buckets. The stuffed lion continues to panic and worry about the situation as we cut to the Shinigami Research and Development Institute. Squad 12 never really sleep, but tonight the atmosphere was buzzing with urgency. Mayuri stood before a containment unit, watching the phosphoplasm samples float unnaturally. He hears that Akon has returned. "You took your time, Akon." He hurriedly responds, "Captain, I have an urgent update." After updating Mayuri on the events that had unfolded in Karakura Town, Mayuri says, "Fascinating. So that tasteless Arrancar has returned. Listen, Akon, we need to examine the samples of the phosphoplasm I've gathered here and compare them against what you have sampled in the world of the living." With a curious expression on his face, he says, "So the jaws of hell are opening from the other side." Also, Captain, I forgot to mention, I advised Kurosaki to update Kisuke about the situation. Mayuri turns and looks at him with an annoyed glance as they continue their investigation. Across the different division barracks, there was also an eerie atmosphere as the captains greet their lieutenants who have just returned, with Captain Kuchiki wasting little time as he looks through his family archives. At the Kuchiki Manor Library, Byakuya swifts through scrolls that hadn't been touched in centuries. Yoruichi accompanies him, perched cat-like on a nearby shelf. "Here," she said suddenly, "another gap. The genealogy records only mention 4 noble families, but the math is wrong. The distribution of authority, the land grants, the seal responsibilities, it's divided by 5. Tokinara even spoke of 5 noble families too." Byakuya wonders, then the Sunyashiro clan might know more then. "Tokinara's dead, and good riddance," Yoruichi says. "But you're right, their private archives might have what we need." She pauses and says, "Byakuya, if there really is a 5th noble family connected to the Konso Reisei and even Hell..." Byakuya interrupts and says, "Yeah, they've been watching us send captains to Hell for over 1,000 years. His voice was steady as he says, "And they've done nothing to stop it." At the Squad 13 barracks, Rukia stood in Ukitake's former office, which is hers now, though she'd never truly felt that it was hers. Sentaro, who was just returned from the 4th Division after dropping Kiyone off, he sits across from Rukia as he asks, "What if Captain Ukitake, what if he's suffering?" "We don't know what hell does to souls," Rukia says gently. "That thing that saved us wasn't him," Sentaro said firmly. "The size, the speed, the brutality. Captain Ukitake would never use his Zanpakuto like that." Rukia quietly interrupts, "Unless something changed after he was sent there." They sat in silence, contemplating the horror of these new revelations. "Captain," Sentaro asked hesitantly, "are we going to be sent to hell too when we die?" Rukia's eyes widened as she didn't answer, because how could she? At the medical bay of the 4th Division, Isane worked with her healers tending to the injuries of Kiyone, but her mind kept circling back to Unohana, her captain, her mentor, the woman who had hidden such terrible strength behind those gentle hands. Could it be true? Is the gentle captain that she remembers suffering in hell now? She sits over Kiyone as her sister says, "Captain Kotatsu," with a weak voice. "Kiyone, I'm glad you're able to speak, but please save your energy, you need to rest." Kiyone struggles but says, "There's something you should know. I felt a strange spiritual pressure in the world of the living. It felt like Captain Ukitake's Reiatsu, and even his Zanpakuto appeared from the gate of hell too, but it all felt so wrong." She adds, "Did we really send them there, Captain, after everything they did for us?" Isane's blood ran cold as she felt a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach as she thinks back to Captain Unohana. The following morning in Karakura Town, we see that Kon hadn't slept at all. He'd spent the entire night worrying about Kazui, while Kazui slept like a baby. He was jumping at every shadow, every creak of the house, as the first rays of sunlight crept through the window. Kazui stared, yawning and stretching like nothing was wrong. "Morning, Kon," Kazui chirped, bouncing out of bed with endless energy. "Is Mom making breakfast? I can smell pancakes." "Yeah, probably," Kon mumbled, watching as Kazui put on his school uniform with practiced efficiency. "You look tired," Kazui observed, tilting his head. "Did you stay up all night again? Mom says that that's bad for you." Geez, I wonder whose fault that is, Kon muttered. Kazui's expression shifted to something almost guilty. I promised I wouldn't go out tonight, didn't I? I keep my promises, Kon. I better get breakfast before Yuzu and Karin eat everything. Kon sat alone in the morning light, listening to the sounds of a noble family having breakfast down below. Orihime's gentle laugh, Kazui chattering about school, the twins spoiling their nephew. Orihime tells them that Ichigo still hasn't returned from the Soul Society yet, explaining that he went to pay his respects to Captain Ukitake, as she hopes that everything is okay. But Yuzu reassures her, saying Ichigo has been so busy with work, he hasn't met with Renji and the others in such a long time. I'm sure everything is okay. Kon listens in, feeling how normal and peaceful everything sounds downstairs. They are all unaware of the concern that's brewing inside of Kon. The plushie walked to the window, looking out at the street. Everything seems to be normal. Kon thinks to himself that someone out there had taught Kazui that ritual. Someone who claimed to be his friend, who had convinced an innocent child that he was helping souls find peace. He thinks to himself, I can't do this anymore. His stuffed paws clenching, I can't keep this secret. Every night it just gets worse. These portals are getting scarier every time they appear. Are those souls really finding peace through something like that? And those floating eyes that appeared during the ritual, what is up with them? What if next time something came through the other side of that portal? What if Kazui gets hurt? Kon thinks of Ichigo scolding him. No way, I ain't losing any more sleep over this. Kon makes his decision. He decides that he has to tell someone, but who? Ichigo would be furious if he told him, and worse, he'd blame Kon for not saying something sooner, for letting it get this far. The thought of Ichigo's anger made Kon's stuffed body shake. He could already imagine the accusations. You were supposed to protect him. How long has this been going on? Why didn't you tell me? But he thought Orihime. Orihime would understand. She'd be worried, yes, but she wouldn't immediately explode. She'd think things through, figure out how to help Kazui without making him feel like he'd done something terrible. Because in Kazui's mind, he was just helping souls move on. Kon could hear them all leaving now, Kazui grabbing his backpack for school, Yuzu and Karin leaving too, as Orihime calls out to Kazui, making sure that he has everything for school. Have a good day, Kazui. Orihime's voice drifted upstairs. The front door closed as everyone leaves to start their day. Soon, Orihime would be alone in the house, so it'd just be her and Kon. This would be his chance to tell her everything. I'm sorry, Kazui, Kon thought, watching the boy skip down the street towards school. But then a hell butterfly lands on the windowsill, its dark wings folding delicately. Kon froze, staring at it. It wasn't moving, it was just sitting there, as if watching him, as if it knew what he was thinking. The butterfly's wings twitched as it vanishes into thin air. Kon falls from the windowsill in fear. His mind is even more made up now. His resolve is hardened by that small, sinister reminder of what was at stake. He made his way towards the kitchen, each step deliberate, as he could hear Orihime humming to herself as she cleaned up the breakfast dishes. He hated that he was about to shatter her peace. As this small but determined voice calls out to Orihime, she turns around surprised. Oh, Kon, I didn't know you were awake. Kon interrupts her, saying, we need to talk about Kazui. Orihime looks over with curiosity as Kon begins to sweat profusely. Okay, so that was the very first chapter of my rendition of the Echoing Jaws of Hell arc. I'm making these videos purely for fun because I love the characters of Bleach after having spent so much time analyzing and explaining everything that there is to know about them. I wanted to have a crack at trying to write how I would interpret Kubo's story, continuing on from the No Breeds from Hell one-shot chapter. This in no way is a replacement for whatever work Kubo does in the future. This is purely just for fun, so please treat it like that. I hope that you all had as much fun watching this as we did writing and editing it. I'd love to know all of your thoughts about how the story continues from here. Please do subscribe to the channel because I will be dropping chapter 2 in a couple of weeks. I'd love to know all of your theories, how you think the story is progressing, so definitely continue the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next chapter of the Echoing Jaws of Hell arc.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.